حي على الفلاح.
If greatness of purpose, smallness of means, and astounding results are the three criteria of human genius, who could dare to compare any great men to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The most famous men created arms, laws, and empires only. They founded, if anything at all, no more than material powers, which often crumbled away before their eyes. This man moved not only armies, legislation, empires, peoples, and dynasties, but millions of men and women in 1/3 of the then inhabited world. And more than that, he moved the altars, the gods, the religions, the ideas, the beliefs, and the souls. On the basis of a book, every letter of which has become law, he created a spiritual nationality which has blended together peoples of every tongue and of every race. He has left to us as the indelible characteristic of this Muslim nationality the hatred of false gods and the passion for the one God, Allah. As he slowly gained converts, the Meccan authorities came to consider him a dangerous nuisance. In 622, fearing for his safety, Muhammad fled to Medina, a city some 200 miles north of Mecca, where he had been offered a position of considerable political power. When Muhammad died in 632, he was the effective ruler of all of southern Arabia. The Bedouin tribesmen of Arabia had a reputation as fierce warriors, but their number was small and plagued by disunity and internecine warfare. They had been no match for the larger armies of the kingdoms in the settled agricultural areas to the north. However, unified by Muhammad for the first time in history and inspired by their fervent belief in the one true God, these small Arab armies now embarked upon one of the most astonishing series of conquests in human history. At this time, both the superpower of its time, the Eastern Roman Empire, and the Sassanid Persian Empire were exhausted of manpower, resources, and finances. They had fought a massive war against each other for decades. At first, the Persians had managed to conquer Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and penetrated deep into Asia Minor to besiege Constantinople. But the Romans fought back and drove them out of the newly conquered territories. By 628, the Romans had just managed to win back lost territory. However, the total war between these empires had devastated the region and alienated them from the local populations. It was the perfect moment for the Muslims to strike. When the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ died in 632 CE, his companions held a debate to determine who would now lead them. At the time, it was necessary for the survival of the community that they elect a leader who could unite the different parties. Eventually, they settled on Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, 573 to 634 CE, a prominent companion, close advisor, and a father-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his successors Umar, Uthman, and Muhammad's son-in-law Ali radiallahu anh expanded the caliphate. Notable events were the conquest of Mesopotamia, the invasion of Palestine and Syria, followed by the defeat of the Byzantine army, led by the Emperor Heraclius in the Battle of Yarmouk. The capture of important cities is well documented: Damascus and Jerusalem and Ctesiphon. In the following years, the Muslims invaded Persia, Egypt, Cyrenaica, and Tripolitania. During the next decades, the frontiers of the Arab Empire would be further expanded to the Pyrenees and the Pamirs. After the death of Caliph Ali radiallahu anh, who was the son-in-law of the Prophet, the family of Muhammad lost influence, and it was the relatives of Uthman radiallahu anh, the Umayyad family, who established the caliphate of Damascus and started to organize the conquest. Under the Umayyads, the caliphate territory grew rapidly. The Islamic caliphate became one of the largest unitary states in history and one of the few states to ever extend direct rule over 3 continents: Africa, Europe, and Asia. The Umayyads incorporated the Caucasus, Transoxiana, Sind, the Maghrib, and the Iberian Peninsula, Al-Andalus in Spain, into the Muslim world. At its greatest extent, the Umayyad Caliphate covered 5.79 million square miles and included 62 million people, 29% of the world's population, making it the 5th largest empire in history in both area and proportion of the world's population. With a combination of 3 important factors: unification, conquest, and religious zeal, the early caliphs were able to consolidate Muslim rule in Arabia and prepare a launching pad for further conquests. This initial spread of Islam was so rapid that in less than 1 century after the death of the Prophet Muhammad in 632 AD, Muslim rule covered more of the earth than had the Roman Empire at its peak. This unification did not, however, happen overnight, and it must be emphasized that Islamic rulers always had much division to contend with. The first caliph, Abu Bakr, had the difficult job of uniting all of the tribes that had forsaken their allegiance to the Ummah after Muhammad's death. Yet through political, theological, and at times military coercion, Abu Bakr was able to completely unify Arabia before his death in 634. Secondly, despite the assassination of the next 3 caliphs, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, which characterizes the bloody period that ensued, the spread of Islam continued to gain momentum as successful military campaigns were carried out abroad. From 634 to 44, the Caliphate of Umar had conquered Jerusalem, controlled Iraq, Syria, Palestine, and Egypt, and defeated the Persian Empire. Furthermore, in Uthman's reign, 644 to 50, Muslims conquered Cyprus, Tripoli in North Africa, and established Islamic rule in Iran, Afghanistan, and the Sind region. The above 2 methods of internal unification and successful conquest led to the establishment of the Islamic world during the 7th century, and the speed in which it accomplished this announced to the world that Islam was here and here to stay. The third explanation of the rapid spread of Islam throughout Arabia and beyond was most importantly the religious zeal of the leaders, soldiers, and general Arab population. Plainly put, without being fueled with a sense that God was on their side, the Muslim conquests would have fallen far short of their eventual reality. Tamara's son explains that the basic tenets of Islamic faith captivated the people and structured Islamic life in Medina, and it was around these practices and core values that the early Muslim community was built. Francesco Gabrielli supports son and places a heavy emphasis on religion as the principal factor underlying and motivating the Arab conquests. Indeed, it is hard to imagine any group achieving geographical expansion without a clear goal and purpose. For the Mongols of the 13th century, it was a brutal ideological reason, while for the Muslims, it was the feeling that they were being divinely guided. Nevertheless, the spread of a religious or ideological ideal can only be truly successful if those whom it is trying to gain submission from are disillusioned or unhappy with their own contemporary world. This was the case for the many thousands of people under Byzantine rule. We find that a great number gladly adhered to the conquering Islamic rulers and Quranic law as they found protection and benefits that had not been attained under Byzantine rule. Many minorities had become increasingly dissatisfied with the Byzantine regime due to their insecurities of being persecuted, and instead came to favor the secure Islamic rulership, who allowed autonomy for minority groups if their taxes were paid. The preference of many of the conquered peoples to favor Islamic rule enabled the Islamic Empire to remain politically stable which is a prerequisite for any group wanting to expand its geographic borders. It is important to reflect on several other specific reasons why Islam spread so rapidly throughout Arabia and to the world. 3 of these deserve particular mention. First, the caliphs and Muslim rulers were willing to use existing administrative structures to enforce laws, and it was not uncommon for non-Islamic officials to be used in high places within a conquered society. Second, there was seldom force or coercion used from Islamic forces once a military campaign was successful. As Francesco Gabrielli explains, the traditional theory of the conquests being characterized merely by Bedouin neophytes of Islam rushing from their desert birthplace to convert other nations with a sword has been completely dismissed by modern historiography. In fact, Arabs were quite content with their passive non-Muslim subjects, known as dhimmis, those who were second-class citizens under Islamic law, yet protected under this status. And no real effort was made to convert them. This hands-off approach actually led to an increase in Islamic converts regularly throughout the Islamic Empire, as individuals were pleased to make their own decision about religion, which is something that had not been afforded them under Byzantine rule. Finally, further comparisons between Byzantine Christianity and Islam highlight how many became turned off by Christendom, but enthusiastic and inquisitive about Islam. Christianity had become heavily clericized by the 7th century and appeared to be exclusive, while Islam appealed to individuals by offering unparalleled simplicity through its core principles. According to Abdul Fadl Izzati, the 5 pillars of Islam, when compared to Christian orthodoxy, replaced complexity of religious doctrines with simplicity, Trinity with unity, theological discussions with concrete observation and fundamental analysis. Moreover, the extent and rapidity of the success of Islamic military conquests had Muslims feeling that there was something divine aiding their cause. Zealous Muslims and their missionary activities always went hand in hand with the success of Islam, and the sense of mission motivated Muslims to assist the expansion efforts in whatever way they could. Hence, Islam appealed to many contemporaries' needs, and with the lure of further expansion, many felt that Islam was the path for the future. During the Abbasid Caliphate, the Islamic Empire greatly contributed to advancements in many fields, including literature, philosophy, science, medicine, mathematics, and art. This period is known as the Islamic Golden Age and lasted from 790 to 1258. This period is understood to have begun during the reign of Abbasid Caliph Harun al-Rashid, with the establishment of the House of Wisdom, Bayt al-Hikmah, also known as the Grand Library of Baghdad. It was a major public academy, an intellectual center belonging to the Abbasid caliphs, which scholars from far and wide flocked to Baghdad to translate the world's classical knowledge into Arabic. The House of Wisdom was home to specialists of all kinds, from scientists and scribes to writers and researchers of various subjects. Here are a few heroes of the Islamic Golden Age whose work has helped shape the world as we know it. Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi was a Persian polymath and renowned mathematician and scholar during the Islamic Golden Age, and he produced influential works in the subjects of mathematics, astronomy, and geography. His book, Kitab al-Jabr wal-Muqabbala, the compendious book on calculation by completion and balancing, introduced systematic methods for solving equations and laid the groundwork for modern algebra. His work earned him the title of the father of algebra. And if you think his name sounds familiar, it's because it gave rise to the terms algorithm and more commonly algorithm. Around 820 CE, he was appointed as the astronomer and head of the library of the House of Wisdom. Ibn Sina, also known as Avicenna, was a prominent philosopher, physician, and polymath, and his works on medicine, particularly the Canon of Medicine, were used as a standard medical textbook in Europe for centuries. He also wrote in philosophy, metaphysics, and mathematics, contributing significantly to the advancement of Islamic philosophy. And if that wasn't enough, his corpus also includes writing on astronomy, alchemy, geography and geology, psychology, Islamic theology, logic, and works of poetry. Al-Farabi was an early Islamic philosopher, scientist, and musician. He was best known for his contributions to philosophy, particularly in the field of political science. His works on political theory, such as the virtuous city and the political regime, were instrumental in shaping the political systems of his time. He also wrote on music, cosmology, and logic, further advancing the field of science during the Islamic Golden Age. Al-Farabi is credited as the first Muslim who presented philosophy as a coherent system in the Islamic world. Umar Khayyam was a Persian poet, mathematician, and astronomer. His works, such as the Rubaiyat, are renowned for their philosophical insights and beauty. He also made significant contributions to the development of mathematics and astronomy. It was his work in which he calculated the duration of the solar year with remarkable precision and accuracy. Then going on to design the Jalali calendar, a solar calendar with a precise 33-year intercalation cycle. This provided the basis for the Persian calendar that is still in use after nearly a millennium. Al-Kindi was a philosopher, mathematician, and musician. He is considered among the first Islamic philosophers and is known for his works on metaphysics, ethics, and theology. He also contributed significantly to the field of mathematics, particularly on cryptography, a pioneer for those in tech, and music theory. His work on his first philosophy laid the foundation of the integration of Islamic philosophy in Aristotelianism. Throughout the Golden Era, Arabic became the language of science and advancement. For example, Maimonides, the great Jewish scholar, a student of the famous Andalusian Ar-Rushd, wrote his most significant work in the Arabic language. The first and one of the greatest universities was Az-Zaytuna in Tunisia, and many Muslim scholars graduated from it. It was the earliest university in the world, built around 703. Then in 859, Princess Fatima al-Firhi, daughter of a wealthy businessman, founded the first degree university in Fez, Morocco, and her sister, Miriam, founded the adjacent mosque. The complex became known as the Al-Qarawiyyin Mosque and University. Another great intellectual center, the Al-Azhar, was founded in 970 in Cairo. It started as a mosque and became the largest academe in the Islamic world. It is named after Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ. She was also called Az-Zahra, the luminous. So Al-Azhar means the illuminated one, a deserving name for this great institution. Another priority of the Muslims was establishing hospitals to take care of the sick and needy. These hospitals were several centuries in advance of the Europeans. Europeans took their cue from these institutions and their teaching methods as standards for students in medical schools. Even adopted practices such as taking students on ward rounds in hospitals attached to schools. These Muslim hospitals provided free treatment and care to anyone in need. The policy was based on the Muslim tradition of caring for the sick and needy. In pharmacology also, Muslim physicians made their lasting contributions. They not only discovered many herbal medicines, but also perfected techniques of chemical extractions. The first official pharmacy was established in Baghdad by Harun al-Rashid, and by the times of Al-Ma'mun, it employed highly qualified pharmacists who were licensed and inspected by the state. Medicine, there were many illustrious Muslim physicians. The foremost among these are such famous personalities as Al-Razi and Abu Ali Sina. The Europeans knew them by their Latinized names, Razis and Avicenna respectively. Both wrote masterpieces that were considered authority in medical universities in Europe until the 18th century. Muhammad al-Razi's Al-Judari wal-Hasba on smallpox, measles, and chickenpox represented the first accurate clinical study of infectious diseases. His other book, called Al-Hawi, or the Comprehensive Book, included all that was known in medicine along with accounts of his own experiments and observations. Abu Ali Sina is called the Prince of Physicians, since he authored the most influential medical textbook called Al-Qanun fi al-Tibb, or the Canon of Medicine, that summed up all existing medical knowledge. In it, he introduced the contagious nature of infectious diseases, the use of quarantine to curb spread of infections, neuropsychiatric conditions such as epilepsy, stroke, and dementia, and complications of diabetes. He suggested that all new medicines should be tested for their efficacy on animals and humans in clinical trials to determine any harmful side effects before they are widely used. It was around the year 1000 that Qasim al-Zahrawi published his renowned 1,500-page illustrated encyclopedia of surgery. It was used as a reference in Europe for the next 500 years. He is credited for developing new treatment methods ranging from dentistry to childbirth. He also performed the first cesarean operation. His surgical tools such as scalpels, bone saws, and forceps are still used in hospitals. Yet another Muslim genius, Al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham, founded the science of vision and optics and wrote Kitab al-Manazir, or Book of Optics, against speculations of Euclid and Ptolemy that light was emitted from the eye. He concluded that light came from the objects that were capable of producing illumination and distinguished primary from secondary emissions. He did countless experiments to support a number of his theories on refraction and the nature of shadows. He did the first study of camera obscura to explain how the eye sees images upright due to connection between the optic nerve and brain. He discovered the principle of inertia centuries before Newton. Muslims during this period even tried aviation. In 852, Armin Firman jumped off a tower in Cordoba with attachment of wings and landed by parachute. Abbas ibn Farnas constructed the first glider and launched himself from a mountain. The idea was pursued by Jawahari and Hadari Ahmad Shalabi. In the Islamic Golden Period, architecture developed into grandness. The Spanish Muslims began building the Great Mosque in Cordoba and went on to construct the Alhambra Palace. This fortress includes Arabic inscriptions, magnificent tiles, and beautiful designs, and this was the peak of architecture. The architect Mimar Sinan was responsible for many magnificent mosques, including the Sulaimani Mosque in Istanbul and the Selimi Mosque in Edirne, both located in Turkey. The end of the Islamic Golden Age, according to the conventional view of Islamic civilization, which holds the creative and dynamic dealing with issues, it started to struggle from the 12th century onwards to respond to the challenges and changes it faced during that time. Many attempts were made by numerous writers, but no one seems to agree on the causes of the collapse of the Islamic Golden Age. The main causes of the decline were the economic and political decline, which led to poverty in the Islamic world, the disturbance of the equity cycle, which is based on Ibn Khaldun's well-known Asabiyya model, the rise and fall of civilizations, natural disasters, foreign invasions by colonial powers, crusades, the 11th century, Mongol Empire, 13th century, Reconquista, 15th century, European colonial empires, 19th century. All of these factors eventually led to the decline of the Islamic Golden Age. Moreover, with the addition of the Mongol raids, which began in 1220, Islamic cities became desolate, and the spread of Islam was curtailed for the first time in centuries as attention was turned to internal frontiers. However, a final thrust of Islamic expansion would occur through the Ottoman Empire, who slowly consolidated its own power in Anatolia, and by the late 14th century had begun to threaten Europe. As Genghis Khan ravaged the Middle East in the 12th century, Islamic nomadic family groups migrated into Central Asia. Many of these groups settled into Anatolia, a region roughly equivalent to modern-day Turkey. These restless Anatolia Turkoman beyliks were kept in check by the Greek Byzantine Empire to the west and the Turkish Seljuk Empire to the east. By the 14th century, those checks had begun to erode, the Byzantines ruling a vast empire from Constantinople often neglected their Anatolian provinces. The Seljuks also controlled far-flung lands, having conquered Persia, Syria, Iraq, and Palestine. However, they fell to the Mongols in 1243. This created a power vacuum and triggered a wave of Turkish refugees into Anatolia. The northwest corner of Anatolia was dominant by a beylik, which came to be known as the Osmanli after its famous chieftain Osman. He started with conquering the regions after regions and raiding the already weakened Byzantine Empire, and declared himself supreme leader. Osman set up a formal government, and his successors continued to expand their territory further and further into what used to be ruled by the Byzantines. We see this expansion continue as we see rulers come and go. There was Osman, Orhan, Murad, and Bayezid. Suddenly we find ourselves in the 1400s, and all Turkish land is now controlled by the Ottomans. In fact, it was Mehmed II who seized the Byzantine capital, Constantinople, in 1453, effectively putting an end to the Byzantine Empire there and then. Mehmed renamed the city to the current Istanbul and kept the city as the capital of the Ottoman Empire, where it pretty much flourished, becoming a dominant international center for trade and culture. One of the early sultans, Murad I, had become the most powerful of the Western Muslim rulers, and this led to the name of the Ottomans, symbolizing hope for a reunified Islamic empire. This hope was fueled by geographical gains made through military expansion by several Ottoman sultans, such as Murad II, who asserted Ottoman power against Hungary and the West, and by 1453, his successor, Mehmed II, who had conquered Constantinople, changed its name to Istanbul and made it the Ottoman capital. Accordingly, the Ottomans had recommenced Muslim expansion and would look to achieve something past Islamic empires could not, to successfully challenge Western Europe. Ottoman expansion continued with Suleiman the Magnificent, whose empire, after conquering Hungary in 1526, had become the greatest power in Eastern Europe. It is important to note here that Suleiman saw the consolidation of Islamic values as the key to his military successes. As Jason Goodwin explains, Suleiman oversaw the most detailed codification of sultanic and Quranic law that had ever been known in a Muslim state. Hence, although the Ottoman Empire did not represent all Muslims, it is clear that great sultans such as Suleiman did not forget the founder of the religion, as they saw themselves as a genuine continuation of early Islamic history. Justin McCarthy puts it clearly for us: the base of the Ottoman Empire was Islam. Religion was intimately bound up with the ideology and legitimacy of the government. Their empire was always styled a Muslim empire, one in the line of Islamic empires that had included the Umayyads, the Abbasids, and the Seljuks. We see once again here, this time under the rule of the Ottomans, that legitimacy and support of a great Islamic empire went hand in hand with a reflection on the spiritual past of the Muslim tradition. Nevertheless, during the latter stages of Ottoman rule, the sultans began looking too far outwardly and neglecting inner spirituality, which deadened the degree of support that Muslims would give it. This empire fatally climaxed when the Ottomans looked to secure further lands in Europe. Their efforts fell horribly short, and they lost a vital battle to the coalition of the Holy League in 1683 at Vienna, when they were forced to humiliatingly sign the Treaty of Karlowitz in 699. They had to yield Ottoman Hungary to Austria, which was the first major Ottoman reversal. Although the empire did not crumble overnight, this point marks the end of Ottoman expansion, and indeed Islamic expansion, and the beginning of its slow decline. The powerful Islamic dynasties and empires finally came to an end with the demise of the Ottoman Empire. Yet the legacy that both it and previous rulership had left behind was a remarkable geographical expansion which had emanated from a small tribe in Arabia. The spread of Islam was orchestrated through the close connection of most Muslims and their leaders to an Islamic way of life, which gave them a sense of purpose for their conquests and expansions. Yet the key to all of this success was surely the religious foundation of the Prophet ﷺ and the early caliphs. The rise of Islam holds a unique place in world history. It is baffling to see how a group of Arab tribesmen managed to organize a state, expand so rapidly, win battles, and conquer so much territory within the span of 200 years. This story echoes Genghis Khan and the Mongol Empire. Genghis Khan was also an orphan who step by step unified the Mongolian tribes and conquered a vast empire. But with one crucial difference: Genghis Khan did not introduce a religion, nor was he considered a prophet of any kind. Thus, when the Mongol Empire dissolved due to internal strife, it left little behind. However, even though the caliphate would dissolve, the religion continued, and through future Islamic rulers regularly reminding their adherents of their prophet and of his message, the Muslims felt as if they were part of something greater than themselves. Despite religious zeal fluctuating from time to time, Islamic faith would always seem to be reinvigorated, which led to grand empires being established and Islamic history being created.